The campus crisis feedback loop is a concept that emerges from my doctoral dissertation research. And in my research, I'm trying to figure out how concerns about free expression on campus have gone from a more or less latent concern in Canadian public discourse to a front and center issue and now a subject of concrete policy making in two Canadian provinces.
Students will have open and free speech, open dialogue, open debate, and they aren't going to be shut down by the special interest groups or the universities. They're going to be able to voice their opinion.
And so the feedback loop is comprised of four mutually reinforcing phenomena. The first one is pretty obvious. There is a steady stream of cases and controversies related to free expression on campuses. If we go back a few years, for example, to 2016 and 2017, in the Lindsay Shepherd and Jordan Peterson affairs, you see a heightened concern for free expression on university campuses, which subsequently animates the second part of the feedback loop, which is a media gaze to campus events. Now, as a result of the media gaze detailing these different cases and controversies, it tends to create an unfavorable portrayal of higher education in Canada, or at least a disproportionately negative portrayal of higher education in Canada, in both news and opinion. And so what this does subsequently is animate the third element of the feedback loop, which is a fundamental shift in public opinion and the way Canadians view higher education. So if you follow news headlines over the last, say, half decade, you couldn't be faulted for thinking that there is something terribly amiss on Canadian university campuses. And so the closing of this feedback loop is essentially the creation of partisan opportunities to channel public dissatisfaction within Canadian public opinion based on these unsavory or unfavorable portrayals of higher education in Canada. So as a part of my dissertation research, I undertook some comparative and historical analysis, and I locate the origin point of the campus crisis feedback loop in the mid-1960s in the state of California. And during that time, as you might know, there was widespread sociocultural tumult, and it was particularly experienced on university campuses across the University of California system. And what Ronald Reagan did in the 1966 gubernatorial election is really turned widespread discontent in response to campus unrest into an electoral strategy that ended up paying dividends and won him a landslide in that 1966 election. Now, if we're comparing that history or that experience in the United States, we can see a closing of the same feedback loop in the sense that something starts with campus unrest and then ends with concrete policy making in both Alberta and Ontario. So when Doug Ford and Jason Kenney both won majority governments in Ontario and Alberta, some of the first policy initiatives that they put into motion were addressing the allegedly dire state of free expression on campus. And the focus of both of these policy initiatives was the Chicago Principles, which is a policy framework initially proprietary to the University of Chicago that subsequently became the focus of a nationwide campaign across the United States, and then was imported through two ministerial directives in Alberta and Ontario that compelled all post-secondary institutions in those provinces to create new policy frameworks and statements that provided greater protections for free expression. Recent free expression cases and controversies in Quebec have led François Legault to now weigh in on this long-winded debate about free expression on campus. And so this actually might be an indication that the campus crisis feedback loop could be closed in an additional Canadian province in Quebec. It remains to be seen whether or not the importation of the Chicago Principles in those two ministerial directives in Alberta and Ontario have borne fruit. Nonetheless, it is likely that if cases and controversies related to free expression continue to emerge on an almost weekly or monthly basis, that other provinces, particularly ones that have politicians who lean conservative, might consider some sort of policy intervention further down the road. These are elements or signals that what began 50 years ago in America in California as a result of the gubernatorial campaigning of Reagan is still incredibly important to this day and can help us explain what's happening on Canadian university campuses at the moment.